Hey friends, how's it going? Well, welcome back. Today's Friday, and it's amazing. I got so busy this week. Last weekend was it was Memorial Day. Hope everybody had a memorable Memorial Day, and I know I did for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I got tied up with a lot of things at this beginning of the week, and yesterday I had to work a shift at the observatory because of Monday was being a holiday. I usually work Monday, so I had to adjust my schedule a bit. But it's okay. We're here now. Even though it's Friday, it's just a day late. So, don't get crazy. Anyhow, hope you guys had a good week. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm hanging in there. But I had a wonderful weekend, and I'll tell you a little bit about that before we get into the content here. So as I mentioned in my last video, I was going to Tehachapi for the annual Western Swing Out, and that's put on by my friend Christina, and she's the head promoter and creator of the event, and then she has a wonderful staff that she's wrangled to help her put on this show, and there's nothing but quality people that's involved in putting on this program in this weekend. It's just great. So they recruit vendors that sell vintage clothing, and predominantly they bring a lot of their ranch wear. Now, what I mean by ranch wear is like, H-Bar-C, nudie, all the different type of Western outfitters of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So it's pretty cool. It's really neat, You look at pictures of Hank Williams and some of the other artists of that era, and you'll see what they're wearing. And it's very stylized of the era, but also Western themed. It's not authentic clothing from the 1880s, of course. It's not what it is. Western culture of the 20th century or mid-century was giving a nod to the cowboy culture of the early period, but it became its own thing, especially with Western swing music. So you had cowboy songs that were swinging like the big bands. They didn't really have too many horns, but they had an attitude about them that was really danceable. Absolutely. So you could do an 8-count Lindy to it, or a West Coast step to it, or whatever. And of course, square dancing was popular at that time as well, and clogging. And my grandparents on my mom's side, the Hatches, my namesake Bob Hatch and my grandmother Lavelle, they used to go clogging all the time, and they loved it. They danced like crazy all the time, especially in the 50s and 60s. And there were so many places to go, to honky tonks and all these little dives that had bands. And Tennessee Ernie Ford actually performed out here a lot. And so they told me, like, oh yeah, we saw him all the time. I'm like, my goodness. But anyhow, it's really cool. Since that culture, I was raised around it because of my grandparents on that side of the family. I didn't really appreciate it as much as I do now. But now that my grandmother's 96 and my grandfather has passed away in 2017, I've gotten into it, and I've kind of gone back to those roots, and really started appreciating all of that. And growing up, cowboy TV shows were on all the time at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather was a huge Bonanza fan, and Gunsmoke and all those westerns, and he loved it, and I can see why. I mean, that was a big part of the culture here in California at that time, and it kind of still is. Not as much, I'd say, but it's still there, and it's neat to honor my grandfather and his interests in that way. So every year I go to the Western Swing Out, and it's very special because I get to I get to remember him and wear the clothing that he used to wear and enjoy it in the way he did, and dance. And to Western swing bands, they recruit, they hire a lot of bands from all over that play authentic Western swing, and it's beautiful. You have guitars and violins and slide guitar and upright bass and wonderful old classic songs out of the Bob Wills playbook, and Hank Williams and Milton Brown and some of the others. It's just great. It really is. So it's a special time to celebrate Western culture and heritage in California, and it's one of the best events I go to. It really is, because everyone that comes out from as far as Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Utah. I mean, there's people that come from all over. There's people, some of them are transplants from England or Australia even. There's people that come all over for this one event. And it's great. It's a whole weekend. And we dance to the bands, we shop and the vendors, and we buy some fun little vintage things here and there. Actually, I got this shirt there last weekend. It's a work shirt. It's a nice 30s style work shirt, but it can pass for kind of like early 30s, type of Western wear, wear it with jeans. But it's a nice shirt. It's actually reproduction. Shh, don't tell anyone. But anyhow, it was a wonderful event, and I did make a mention I have a new love interest, and we went together, and it was a wonderful time, and we got to spend the entire weekend together, and it was amazing. We got some dancing in, we enjoyed the vendors, and we enjoyed the food. There was really good Mexican food there. A lot of street vendors come around, and it's amazing. That's the real deal. And there was a car show, and it was a lot of fun. And Tehachapi is a great host, and it's all held at the VFW there in town. And I mean, the whole building's Western, and it's connected to an antique store, for crying out loud, so you can't go wrong. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great time, and made a lot of great memories, and saw a lot of friends, and it was very special. So yeah, anyhow, enough of that. We'll get into the content here. So we have a revisit, as you can see in the thumbnail, of the Liberty Cold Blast, and I kind of tweaked it out a little bit. Yeah, this is actually a little more authentic to what it would have been when it was brand new. No, I didn't clean it up. I just kind of added a few little things. So here we go. Yeah, it doesn't look too much different than it did when you last saw it, right? The copper fount made by CT Ham, but look at this. Yeah, not bad, huh? Right? And this. Yeah, the spring grip, the spring bail grip. I've always wanted one of these. Now, how did I get it? Well, let's light it and we'll get into the talk here, all right? Well, this is going to be difficult. I don't have my matches. Well, let's see if I can do it with this. Well, that was a miracle. Oof, I know. Almost wasn't able to light it. I didn't bring my bag out today, and I'll tell you why. Anyways, there we go. So this lantern is definitely a favorite of mine. I really love this thing. But how I came to get the Liberty Cold Blast Globe and the bail is an interesting story. So on the Tubular group on Facebook, somebody I'm friends with, as well as a member on there, he posted some lanterns for sale. And one of them was an Embry-made jobber. And it's a neat lantern. I still have it. I'm not going to do anything with it except for maybe fixing it up eventually. But it had this Cold Blast Liberty Globe and this bail. And this bail is more likely original to that lantern, but I think it looks really good on this this particular jobber. Now, CT Ham did offer a spring bail grip for their Norlay Diamond affiliation. CT Ham made jobbers for several different hardware companies in the era up till the end, but they did offer this grip on their bails as well as Embry. Now, what's the point of this bail? No, the bail doesn't get that hot, so it doesn't need to have a spring bail. We've seen a lot of jobbers with wooden grips. Now that's just to make it more comfortable. And I'll tell you, this is more comfortable than just holding the wire. That's why people put a grip on the bail, is because it's just for comfort. I've seen bales that were wrapped with twine or some other cord just to add some comfort. So it's just not a thin wire that you're holding for any amount of time. It can kind of dig into your fingers a little bit. If the fountain's full, it gets a little heavy. These are kind of heavy when they're full. It will surprise you. It will, especially with the weighted glass, the full weight glass and everything. Yeah, they get heavy. So yeah. Anyway, I took this off of the lantern that it came with, and the shoulder and right here where the bale goes into the air tube it's damaged, heavily damaged. So there probably is a way to repair it, and I'm going to investigate that because the rest of the frame's good. And it's a nice lantern, and I want to enjoy it. But this bale was useless on that lantern, and so I put it on this one. Now, the bale that came on this originally is most likely the original bale. Okay, it's now on the Embry made jobber that this came with. But I'll share that lantern in the next video. However, I think this is such a beautiful setup with this nice aged old bale and the spring grip and the cold blast globe. That's more or less the correct globe for this lantern. That's right. And it just looks, it's just elegant. I love the aged old red Japanning that's flaked off a little bit, and the aged copper, and it just has this very untouched aesthetic about it. Now, of course, me, I didn't clean the globe. It came just as dirty as it was when it was presented on Facebook. And I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to just leave it as is because I think it really enhances the whole aesthetic of this piece. Yeah, and it diffuses light. Now, a lot of people like clean glass. I have plenty of lanterns with clean glass. Don't get me wrong. I like it. I see the benefit of it, of course. But, burning it like this is actually very kind of soothing because it diffuses the light so you're not seeing one point of light, and it softens it. So it's like they have frosted globes. You've seen frosted globes? I know you have. So frosted globes will diffuse the light so it's not so harsh. It's kind of acting like a lamp shade, if you will. So you don't have one point of light that's bright. It just kind of is spread all over the globe, and it diffuses it so it's nice and soft and easier to look at. And if you're not using it to read by or see by, but just a nice ambient type of accent light, then that's really ideal. In my opinion, it is. But yeah, beautiful piece. I really like this thing. And I got this from Jeff Bergstrom, and it's a beautiful lantern. I love it to death. And now that it has some fancy little jewelry, some added little bonuses, especially the Mark Globe, it's definitely a keeper for sure. I love this piece, and I'm not going to lie. I have a thing for jobbers. Hardware store, house brands. It's neat because they were really fancy. They were really fancy. You look at the Norley Diamond, the Our Very Best from Hibbert Spencer Bartlett, and of course Simmons Liberty. I mean, it's just cool stuff. And they always had a little fancier details and features because they wanted to appeal to their customer base. And they wanted to offer a higher grade lantern than the regular run-of-the-mill other brands out there. They wanted their lantern to represent their brand. But of course they had different levels. You had stuff that wasn't copper fount with fancy bales and stuff, but you had stuff that was more basic, and then they had more expensive ones. So they had a basic lantern, and then they had the fancy ones. Now, why did they offer fancy ones? Glad you asked. They offered fancy ones because, some households wanted to have a fancier lantern because people did carry these around at night if they were visiting friends or calling on somebody. Street lighting wasn't common. There wasn't much street lighting, especially in rural areas. So if you're walking around at night, you're going to want to have a light. Now, common understanding of that era is that people just didn't go out at night. And people just stayed at home. Once the sun went down, they stayed in. Now, that was true earlier on, but this is from the 1910s. This lantern dates to about maybe 1912, 13, right around there. So, if you were on a farm, of course, a lot of people did retire when the sun went down, or they stayed inside for a few hours and enjoyed some family time reading a book, or sewing or mending something in the evening before everyone retired. So, but in the city or in the whatever outskirts of town, there was not a lot of lighting, especially since electricity was still relatively new, especially outside of town. You had people that had plans to go visit friends or call on neighbors or whatever, and so they would carry these around. I saw an advertisement for Norley Diamond Lanterns from an old catalog page I saw on was on eBay, I think, but it showed people walking up and down the street carrying lanterns, and they were saying that their lanterns were the fancier alternative, and that you would be proud to be seen with. And they had this whole sales pitch, of course, but yeah, some of the the better homes had better lanterns, and you wanted something that was nice and looked pretty. The copper fount wasn't just functional because it resisted rust. It doesn't rust. It doesn't get decay. It's easier to dent, but it is soft metal. But it's pretty. A copper fount, painted frame, fancy spring bell grip, elegant. This lantern was a very elegant lantern when it was brand new, and yeah, you could go full bore and restore it. You could polish it out and try to get the dents out of it and repaint it and everything. And some people have done that, and they look nice. I'm not going to say that they don't. But this one, of course, is a survivor, and it represents the era that it came from. And it just looks like someone had blown it out and left it on a shelf for 100 plus years. And I like that look, of course. You all know that. It's not a surprise. Not at all. But anyways, this thing is just really cool, and I love it. I'm glad I own it, and this bale really kind of makes it. And just has a really cool aesthetic, and it's going to be something I'm going to take camping and hanging out at friends' houses, and barbecue season's right around the corner. Actually, it's technically here, I guess you could say. But anyhow, this is going to be fun, and we're going to enjoy it, and I'm definitely loving it, and as well as my other jobbers that I have that are Norley Diamond or OVB or whatever. I don't really have too many other jobbers. Well, the lantern that came with all this stuff is from another hardware company I don't recognize, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of a dive on it and, tell you guys about it when I do showcase that particular lantern. So, yeah. But anyways, you're probably wondering where my pipe is. Yeah. Well, apparently I've enjoyed too many cigars out here, and some of my neighbors have detected heavy traces of cigar smoke in their garages because they're all connected. And they raised the petition to the landlord. That's right, I rent. And, they've made it quite clear that that's not something they want to tolerate. So I have to figure out an approach to compromise with them. And I'm really upset. I'm really upset because that's one thing I really enjoy out here, and that one act. You may agree with smoking or disagree with smoking. I don't really care either way. But that one thing brought me a lot of comfort through some really hard times. And I don't really appreciate it. And I wish they would have came to me and told me and talked to me, and we could have worked it out like adults. And we could have had a conversation, and I could have been accommodating in some way, other ways. But no, they wanted to make their voices known to somebody else. And so I don't know what the future is of this channel. I know that having a pipe is kind of a fun thing. I enjoyed it, and a lot of people have enjoyed it. And I've gotten a lot of comments from a lot of you saying that was reminding you of a grandfather or a father, and that really made this. It was a not a prop, but it was an added thing that a lot of people have commented on that they appreciated, because it's very personal. We're just having a talk out here. So I'm very disappointed that they don't respect me in the way that I thought they did. And I'm missing that tool, that thing I can hold and share with you guys. And it does stimulate thought. It really does. And I'm able to articulate and share things via that. And a lot of people that don't smoke don't understand that. They don't understand that. They just see it as a very bad thing that they don't want around. And that's fine. You can have that opinion if that's your opinion. But full things, a pipe, you don't inhale that. It mostly smells nice. Most people like the smell of a pipe. But anyhow, I'm not licked. I will have to figure out a way to navigate this new prohibition property wide. Yeah. Anyway, I know the landlord. He's a good man. He's a friend as well, and I've always respected him. And I've always said that he was the best landlord I've ever had in my life. I've only had a couple, but he's a rational person, and I'll be able to maybe approach him again and see what we can do. Okay. But anyhow, I wanted to let you guys know. Some of you already know because I made a post on the Tubular group on Facebook about it, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys, and I appreciate your support. I appreciate your encouragement, and yeah, I don't want to let you guys down. You know, you guys have been there for me when I needed it the most, and I really do appreciate you guys. So we're gonna keep on keeping on, even if there's no puffing involved. We'll just keep on going until we can figure out a happy medium. Okay. Well, thanks again for tuning in, everybody. You guys are very much appreciated and loved, and we'll get back at you next week with another video. And keep a lamp burning for me, all right? I need it, and somebody else needs it too. Yeah, somebody else needs it too. So burn a lamp, keep these good thoughts and prayers going, and we'll be seeing you guys next week, same time, same channel. Don't miss it. Bye. Sit, boo boo, sit. Good dog.